MBA applicants often ask us to compare Chicago Booth to MIT Sloan. After all, both are among the top US business schools. How are they similar? How are they different? That's what we'll cover in this in-depth look at Chicago Booth versus MIT Sloan. Let's start with similarities. As I mentioned, both are top business schools in the US and the world. Chicago Booth and MIT Sloan consistently rank in the top 10, if not higher, on all of the reputable ranking lists. They have comparable core stats, with average classic GMAT scores around 730 and GRE scores around 325. Average GPAs around 3.6 to 3.7. Students with 5 years of work experience when they matriculate, and about 40% international students. And rest assured that you should have no concerns about the perceived value or prestige of your education at either school. Another commonality is location, with both schools in urban settings with pretty similar climates. This means their campuses are easily accessible to the core of Chicago or Boston, with plentiful cultural resources and sites, vibrant restaurants and nightlife, convenient transportation options, and the occasional winter snowstorm. It's worth noting that Boston is more expensive, about 30% overall higher cost of living, with housing costs as much as 60% higher in Boston than Chicago. Both share the benefits of a big city, though of course they're not the same. So it's worth exploring where you prefer to live. Aside from 2 years in the program, MIT Sloan graduates are more likely to stay in the Northeast, with nearly half of the most recent class located in Boston or New York City after graduation. Chicago Booth graduates, on the other hand, tend to be more dispersed, with about 1/3 in the Midwest, another third on the East Coast, and another third in the West or Southwest after graduation. Before we dive into more key differences, I encourage you to check out On Track by mbaMission, our comprehensive asynchronous MBA admissions course. In addition to dozens of modules on core topics like post-MBA goals, essays, resumes, recommendations, and interviews, we provide in-depth learning modules on more than 15 of the top MBA programs, including Chicago Booth and MIT Sloan. We then dive into the application components for each school. There's an incredible amount of content on each program. It will actually make your applications more efficient. I recommend checking it out. Now, back to Booth versus Sloan. In terms of differences, I'm going to cover 3 key areas: career focus, class size, and academics. I already touched on career outcomes in terms of location, but let's do a deeper dive into those outcomes so that you can learn even more. When many applicants think about Chicago Booth, they think of finance. And when they think of MIT Sloan, they think of technology. And mostly, these reputations hold true. Chicago Booth sends about 1/3 of its graduates into the finance industry and has a roster of leading, even Nobel Prize-winning faculty in finance. Similarly, MIT Sloan sends just shy of 1/3 of its graduates into the technology industry and has a reputation for groundbreaking technology research and development. Technology is in the school's name, after all. Does this mean that you can't pursue tech from Chicago Booth or can't pursue finance from MIT Sloan? Absolutely not. As I mentioned, only about 1/3 of each class goes into these areas at each of these respective schools. About 15 to 20% of Booth's graduates work in tech, and a similar proportion of Sloan's graduates work in finance. Both schools have also built impressive reputations for careers in entrepreneurship. Chicago Booth's entrepreneurship resources are centralized within the Polsky Center, which hosts the New Venture Challenge, a top-ranked accelerator competition launched in 1996. At MIT Sloan, there's the Martin Trust and the MIT 100K Entrepreneurship Competition, launched even earlier in 1989. MIT Sloan does get a slight edge here, as it offers a formalized entrepreneurship and innovation certificate that students can pursue, and roughly double the percentage of MIT Sloan graduates start their own businesses right after graduation, 8% versus 4% of the class. Another important statistic, though, that I haven't really focused on yet, because I've been discussing the school's stereotypes, that the #1 industry for graduates from both Chicago Booth and MIT Sloan is not finance or technology, it is consulting. Perhaps the career outcomes from these two programs are more similar than different. Moving on, there's a pretty clear difference in class size. Chicago Booth is one of the larger programs, with 637 full-time MBA students and 55,000 alumni worldwide. This has its benefits in terms of a broader network. MIT Sloan is a mid-sized program with slightly over 400 students and an alumni network of about 24,000 worldwide. What you give up in breadth of network, you usually gain in terms of having a more knowable, close-knit community. There's no right sides, it just depends on what you prefer. Lastly, I want to compare the academics. Both schools employ various teaching methods. You'll find courses taught with case studies, group work, lectures, client projects, and others at both programs. Neither school has required majors. Booth offers over a dozen optional concentrations and says that students typically earn 3 or even 4 concentrations as they pursue courses of interest. These concentrations range from behavioral science to economics to marketing management. MIT Sloan offers the option to choose one of 3 tracks: finance, enterprise management, and entrepreneurship and innovation for students who want to specialize. However, at Chicago Booth, you have nearly complete flexibility. There's only one required course that all Chicago Booth students must take, whereas all MIT Sloan students take one whole semester's worth of 6 required courses, and you cannot waive out of anything. After that, though, the program becomes entirely flexible. Embedded into MIT Sloan's curriculum is a much stronger emphasis on action learning. This fits with MIT's motto, mens manus, or mind in hand, which underscores the importance of learning by doing. You'll find more than 10 action labs at MIT Sloan. These include opportunities to get outside the classroom in different areas such as healthcare, H-Lab, or real estate lab, or E-Lab. There's also the Sloan Intensive Period, which is a week-long hands-on learning experience in the middle of each semester. And beyond the business school, the action learning focus extends to integration within the broader MIT community. If there's a style that Chicago Booth is most known for, it's an analytical and data-driven approach, one where you'll develop the theoretical skills and frameworks to analyze problems in any field, called the Chicago approach. Much of the classroom environment focuses on debate and discussion, but there are also group and hands-on projects. With all the flexibility you have at Chicago Booth, you can opt for one of the school's lab courses. Popular ones include the Private Equity Venture Capital Lab and the Lab in Developing New Products and Services. So, which do you prefer, Chicago Booth or MIT Sloan? Or do you like them both? Both schools have reputations for smart, entrepreneurial, and humble students, so it's no wonder both may be on your list. I encourage you to download our free School Insider's Guide for more in-depth information on both schools. You can also click the link below to sign up for a free 30-minute consultation to discuss your profile and target schools with an mbaMission consultant. Let us know in the comments what other school comparisons you'd like to see, and if you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel for even more MBA admissions tips, including our video on how to get into Chicago Booth, coming up next.